Hey everybody, Roger here, trying to do an entry for Mike over at Jam on Vinyl. He's doing a 270 subs contest called Jam on History. Mike is a history teacher, a drummer, loves his history, wants us to do 5 records that have something to do with history, whether it's a person, a place, an event, something that's history related with that song or record, whatever. And also, he loves mono recordings and pressings. So he would like as a bonus to show a mono pressing. So this contest could go so many different ways. I've seen a lot of good ones that people have done various things. And for me, I'm going to go something that kind of hits with me because I love history. I especially love Texas history and the Old West history. And so that's what I'm going to do my albums and songs accordingly to that. It will all be Old West, and there's going to be a Texas connection of some sort to it. We're going to start out with this one. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. This is the Bob Dylan soundtrack for the movie. It had Chris Christopherson in it playing Billy the Kid. I think most people know the story about Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett from the, if nothing else, from the movie Young Guns with Emilio Estevez playing Billy the Kid. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid were good friends. Matter of fact, they called each other Big Cinco and Little Cinco. And after the Lincoln County Wars erupted, and unfortunately Billy the Kid was on one side, Pat Garrett was elected sheriff with the sole purpose of putting an end to the Lincoln County War. And in doing so, he ended up having to kill Billy the Kid. A few years later, Pat Garrett was killed in a bar in El Paso, Texas. But back when their younger days, when they were good buddies and running around with each other, Billy the Kid often ran the Lincoln County, New Mexico area is not that far from the Texas state line. And so a lot of times he would cross back and forth over into Texas, up in the Texas Panhandle area, and trade and visit friends and one thing or another, hide out from the law, whatever. And Pat Garrett at one point was hired to take care of some cattle rustling and stuff going on in the Amarillo, Texas area up in the Panhandle. So there's a Texas connection to Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Second one. Of course, you know me and my Eagles. We're going to do this first song, Lynn Dalton. Bill Doolin was... as a young man, came to Oklahoma. I think he was born in Arkansas, if I remember. Came to Oklahoma and went to work on some of the ranches there. Well, one of the ranches he worked at had a couple of guys that would come in and out at various times and work at the ranch that were the Dalton brothers and ran the Dalton gang. Well, Bill Doolin got in trouble over a shooting and had to leave the ranch, and ended up joining in with the Dalton gang. He was in with them, headed to Coffeyville, Kansas for their bank raid there, and his horse came up lame. He told him to go on, he'd catch up with them, and by the time he found another horse and caught up with them and got to Coffeyville, Kansas, the Dalton gang were all dead. The bank heist had gone bad, and put an end to the Dalton gang. Bill Doolin ended up forming his own gang, and they robbed banks and stuff in Kansas, Oklahoma, and northern Texas. And in that area, at a later date, at that area, in Oklahoma, he ended up getting killed, tracked down by a famous lawman, Bill Tillman. So there's that one. Number 3, Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs by Marty Robbins. Could have had several off of this record. Matter of fact, there's one on here, Billy the Kid. But the song I'm going with is the first one listed here, Big Iron. Marty Robbins was born in Arizona and raised at the knee of his grandfather. His grandfather was a former Texas Ranger. And my understanding is that the song Big Iron was taken from bits and pieces of different stories that Marty Robbins had heard from his grandfather as a Texas Ranger. But in Big Iron, he transferred it to being an Arizona Ranger. So, but anyway, Marty Robbins, Big Iron. And of course, being a fourth generation Texan, of course I have to do this one, the Alamo. Everybody knows the story of the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. One of the big things I just want to bring out about it is most movies are incorrect to some degree or another. But most people think of the Alamo as a fort, as a big fort that was set up. And that's incorrect. That's the biggest misconception from what I hear, documents and stuff written, or people's comments. It was not a fort. It was a dilapidated, rundown chapel that needed lots of work done on it, lots of repair. The original commander that was in charge of the troops there sent letters back to the Constitutional Convention people of Texas trying to get reinforcements. He said, I need about 4 or 5 times more men than what I have. And, of course, we've got to remember too, Alamo was not defended by a bunch of trained soldiers. It was militia men, just your average farmers and ranchers and people like that were pulled together to come and help defend against Santa Anna. Originally, they were not wanting to break away from Mexico. Originally, it was just wanting Santa Anna to back down from becoming a dictatorship and ruling with the iron fist. And they wanted to live by the Constitution that was of Mexico they had all came and settled in Texas for under that Constitution. But Santa Anna had kind of pushed that aside and started ruling with an iron fist. And to a degree, he had some legitimate reasons. He viewed that too many Americans were coming in and felt like it was going to become a battle at some point to keep that portion of Mexico as Mexico and not have it being taken over by the Americans. So in that aspect, I guess he was kind of right. But the original battles and stuff was not for that reason. One of the other things is I've read several books on the Alamo, and every one of them talk about how the events that went down leading up to decisions made and everything were so unconventional in military strategy and things that should have been done that it's a miracle that the Alamo lasted and stood as long as it did. They said it went against all wisdom. After the initial general or commander, I should say, he wasn't a general, the commander left and placed Travis in charge. Travis wasn't a fortress type guy. He was a cavalry man, so he wanted to fight out in the open with the cavalry and stuff like that. So putting him behind a wall and telling him to defend it went against every principle he stood for and knew how to deal with and fight. So, like I said, several different things that went on that were not, strategically advantageous to the Texans as they fought this. Again, there was about 200 Texans and Kentuckians that stood up against about 3,000 Mexicans. There again, the Texicans were farmers, ranchers, militiamen. There was a handful of trained soldiers, but for the most part, they weren't. And the Mexicans were trained soldiers. So there's another deal. It's amazing that they lasted. But that 13 days that they stood gave Sam Houston time to get forces together and organize to some degree a army of militia to try to stand up against Santa Anna, and they caught him sleeping and won the battle. So, but anyway, a little bit of Texas history there. So the Alamo. This one, number 5. The song on this one, I like the song actually, the version off of Double Live Gonzo better than this. But I always show Double Live Gonzo when I show Ted Nugent, it seems like. So I thought, well, I'll show this one as Amboy Dukes. But the song is Great White Buffalo. The buffaloes, of course, we know ranged the prairies and stuff and was the lifeblood of the Indians. And a white buffalo was considered magic, mystique, and they were very rare. If you think about all the hundreds of thousands of buffalo that were taken during that time period that basically wiped out the buffalo population, that, if I'm not mistaken, there was only 7 white buffalo ever shot. Just north of about 80 miles northeast of where I live, in the county of Scurry County, J. Wright Moore killed one of these white buffalo. He became so famous and notorious, or not notorious, but famous, and received such accolades, and went out giving speeches and showing off the robe that was made from that hide, and received tons of money, and ended up coming back to Scurry County and buying a lot of land and developing his ranch there. And off of his ranch, they ended up developing the little town of Snyder, Texas, which became the county seat of Scurry County. But unlike the song talking about up on the canyon walls, there's not any really canyons per se. There may be little ravines or some stuff like that around Snyder and in Scurry County, but no canyons to speak of. So, but anyway, just the white buffalo aspect of it I thought was pretty neat, and I could kind of relate because they have a white buffalo statue on the courthouse square in honor of that now. So anyway, white buffalo, Great White Buffalo, Ted Nugent. Oh, there's the back, if anybody's interested in the back. Alamo, Marty Robbins, Big Iron, Eagles, Lynn Dalton, Bob Dylan, Billy the Kid, and Pat Garrett. For the bonus, to kind of keep with that cowboy theme and the mono record, I've got a 10-inch Bing Crosby cowboy songs, that mono, of course, on the black Decca label. So there's your mono, Mike. So y'all enjoy. Hope everything's going good out there. I appreciate everyone that watches and comments. I tell you, it means so much, and you don't realize how nice it is to get those comments and the views and stuff. And I try to write back whenever, as much as I can. And I try to comment on everybody's videos that I watch. Unfortunately, time-wise, I don't have as much as I used to, and I don't get to do that as much. So, but anyway, for Mike, Jam on Vital, if you don't know his channel, check him out. I'll put a link to his channel down in the notes. Great job, Mike. Well deserved. Till next time, keep them spinning.